In the past, you might have seen these long buses, but what the heck has happened to them? Watch on because you might be surprised to know that they still exist. So, what are these buses? For a start, these buses are officially known as articulated buses, but we call them bendy buses because they bend in the middle of the bus. Basically, it's a single deck bus that's much longer, almost twice the length of a normal bus, and with 3 doors. People can stand at the bend, whereby the floor looks like a circle. They were introduced to the public in 1996 and was mainly for the then Trans-Island buses. Trans-Island was then taken over by SMRT in 2001, and all their buses have since been rebranded as SMRT buses from 2004. Most of these buses are in the north to northwest, like Woodlands, Choa Chu Kang, and Bukit Batok. Now, it should be noted that even before the introduction of bendy buses, there were already double-decker buses. And just so you know, both the bendy buses and the double-decker buses can hold the same number of passengers. However, seniors usually prefer the bendy buses because they will not need to climb up to the second level. So, why do we use these bendy buses then? Well, the answer is simple. One bus can carry more passengers. Of course, technically, both bendy buses and double-decker buses can carry the same number of passengers, but to some extent, bendy buses are preferred. You see, some people prefer not to go up to the second floor in a double-decker bus, either because they did not know if the upper deck was full, or they were afraid that the upper deck is dangerous because there's no driver on the upper deck.
Oi, don't be a bodo. You don't need a driver on the upper deck lah.
Oh, why?
Walao weh, you bodo sia. Cause now have self-driving vehicle.
Yeah, you get the idea. People just did not want to head up lah. And it was so popular that at its peak, at around 2014, there were over 250 bendy buses plying Singapore's roads. However, despite its usefulness, there are a few major drawbacks. Today's sponsor is Tian Long Services. If you run a business, you'll know that it's a headache when it comes to accounting and bookkeeping. You have more headache when it's time for financial statements. But don't worry lah. You can outsource to Tian Long Services, which has been servicing clients since 2018. Their founders were ex-Big 4 auditors in Singapore, so you can trust them to handle your numbers. Click on the link in the description for more info. Now, back to the video. You see, as of now, there are only about 40 bendy buses plying Singapore Road. Yes, I bet you did not know that. And they are mainly in Woodlands and Choa Chu Kang. In fact, one of us in Goody Feet lives in Woodlands and was surprised to know that bendy buses are actually rare nowadays, as it's used to seeing them in Woodlands. Therefore, with 40 out of 5,800 public buses, they comprise less than 0.7% of the total fleet in Singapore. Moreover, they might soon be completely discontinued after they reach the end of their lifespan, which could be around early 2030s or maybe even earlier as we move to electric vehicles. Now, note that I'm aware that we might be seeing an electric bendy bus with 4 doors in 2027, but because I cannot 100% confirm, I will just go with the idea that they might be fully discontinued. But why would they be discontinued? Well, one of the key reasons is that they take up too much space on the road. You see, it's fine if it's just a normal bus stop at Jurong East Avenue 1, whereby uncles and aunties take the buses to meet friends and drink kopi o kosong at Zheng Hao Chi Kopitiam at 3 PM on a Saturday. But if you have ever taken a bus during peak hours at somewhere like Serangoon MRT station, you'll know the chaos. Tens of people rushing to board, while buses line up just to reach the stop. Usually, only 2 buses can load and unload passengers at a time. But throw in a bendy bus and suddenly it takes up more space, which means an even longer queue forms behind. Now, imagine if 2 bendy buses show up back to back. Wow, you'll look less like buses and more like an MRT train in disguise lah. So yes, you get the idea, but that's not the only issue. Bendy buses are also more expensive to maintain, and also, bus captains need to be trained to drive bendy buses. Also, you might have drivers like Cassandra, who is a kanchong spider when turning together with a bus, which could lead to more accidents because Cassandra is a bad driver.
Who is Cassandra?
I'm looking at her now. So yes, if you have noticed, nowadays it has become more of a nostalgic bus for people who don't live in Woodlands. But at least you can still take the buses for a few years before they become completely obsolete lah. However, there's one thing that has become completely obsolete: TV Mobile. And they were gone for a reason you likely didn't expect. Watch this to know more. Also, do follow us on Instagram, link in description. And if you want to advertise with us, even as a standalone video, do contact us lah. Thank you for spending almost 4 minutes with me. I really appreciate it and hope you learned something.